Hi, Tamara. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm very good. Have you had a haircut?
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I'm late. I don't know what I was just doing something, and then I just was like, oh my god, it's so sorry.
We're here to talk about this new record. It's been described as an accompaniment to the last one. So, as an accompaniment to Ignorance. Obviously, Ignorance was a big album for you. It was a shift in sound. It was also very well received. It made a lot of end of year lists, including my own, I have to say.
Aw, thank you.
And it's actually the anniversary is this weekend of the release date of that record.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah. Thanks for reminding me.
yeah, how has the last 12 months been for you, and has much changed because of that record?
So much has changed. Yeah, it's been amazing. Honestly, I really feel like I've been living a dream I didn't even fully know I had. Like I didn't even know I could dream of all of this happening. Honestly, it's so exceeded my expectations, and uh, yeah, it's truly amazing, and I'm really honored by the response to that record.
Do you have any like pinch me moments from the last 12 months where you like, I would never thought this would have happened?
So many. I mean, so many. Like I like FaceTiming with Elton John. Like that was insane. I mean, yeah, like playing on Jimmy Kimmel. Like that's airing tonight. I mean, it's so many. Yeah, the New York Times profile. Like, I mean, there's so many that I didn't even. I can't even. I haven't even absorbed everything that happened myself. Um, I feel like I need to make a scrapbook and look at it 5 years from now to really understand what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's amazing and well deserved, I think. So
Mm.
I'm really pleased that things have been happening for you, especially in a very complicated time that we're living in.
Yeah.
So Ignorance came out a year ago. I guess it was a long time before that you started writing it. At what point did you realize that you were going to have songs for something else to follow that album?
I mean, yeah, when I wrote Ignorance, like it was a very, yeah, just a winter of songwriting. And these songs were all written or at least started at that time, at that same time. And some of them, like, yeah, I thought maybe we're on Ignorance, and like we tried recording one, and like songs switched records. But I think as I was writing, at some point I just started to realize I was writing two different things. Like I was writing a record, and then I was writing this other batch of songs that I I thought were just for me. And sometimes it was almost like a relaxation, where I'd have a little song and I'd be like, oh, this isn't a song for the record, but I'm gonna finish it anyways, just for myself, just so I know it's done. Because I've learned too that with songs, a lot of my songs come from a really compelling. There's like something that compels me to write the song, and if I don't finish the song, which is very common for me, that thing will just show up in the next song and the next song and the next song until I finish the song. It's like the thing will continue to try to be expressed. So I felt that these songs, even though I couldn't see them on the record, I was like, they want to exist, so I'm gonna let them exist. And then, yeah, at a certain point, I was like, maybe they're ballads. Like that word just kind of came to mind, and I was like, they're my ballads. So I just kind of put them aside, and um, there were there was like a lot of them. There's a lot more of them that are on this record, and then when I finished Ignorance and it was done, and I sort of had a sense of what songs were on that record and what songs weren't, I was like, I started thinking about these songs that I had in my notebook, and just feeling a real sense of like not wanting to forget them and not wanting them to be lost, and
Mm.
wanting to make sure they were, recorded in some way. And that's when I started to conceive of this idea of just recording them and just having them be in existence and not really having a plan for what happens after that.
So I believe that when you did record them, you kind of kept it to yourself, right? It was just you and your musician and friends recording
Yeah.
recording these songs. Was it still like in the back of your mind that it might just still be just for you and them at that point, or did you know you were going to release the album?
Yeah, I was kind of like, I felt like it would be doing the musicians a disservice if I didn't release it in any way, but I had a nice little arrangement with them where I was like, I'll pay you this much now for your time, and then if the record comes out, I'll pay you this other amount. And so it was very peaceful. It was very peaceful, and there were moments in recording where I was really excited, and I was like, this has to come out. I have to, and then there were moments where I was like, nah, I don't need this to come out. But in general, because of the way I set it up, I was really released from I felt very free in not thinking about an audience, really.
Okay. Now, there's been a lot of attention paid to the topics of ignorance, and especially the climate change things that you sing about. Does that theme continue through to these songs as well?
Yeah, it does. On a few of them in particular, and that was part of my motivation to release the record, actually, because I realized there were just a few other pieces that I wanted to express that I felt like weren't on ignorance. So I wanted just those last little shards to be in the consciousness, and just a few of those songs felt really key. And almost more overt in a way than ignorance. I mean, like Endless Time and Stars, that song, and the song about the magpie felt really relevant to me. But yeah, as with ignorance, the intention wasn't to write like a climate change record. Like I think if I'd had that intention, like none of these songs would have existed, and I probably would have written something really maybe bad. but yeah.
Because your way of approaching climate change is not from a political kind of ram it down your throat point of view. It's much more of a personal, like how you feel kind of way of expressing it. Was that always like your intention? Is that just the way that you write songs? Was there ever a point where you like you wrote something that was a bit more political or a bit more forceful?
I mean, I've tried. I haven't succeeded. I'm not very good at. I've on many occasions in my life sat down and been like, I'm going to write a song about this. Like, I'm going to write a song about this person. It's not going to be about me. I've had my songwriting practice. There's a side that comes from somewhere else, and I can't control it. So, no matter what I think I'm doing, the thing that needs to be expressed is just what'll come out. I don't have much control over my topics. I think someday I will get there, but I'm not there yet. So yeah, but I do believe, and this is something I've carried into like my talking on this topic in the press and social media and all the places where I try to talk about it, is I actually believe that the barrier isn't the politics. It isn't a lack of awareness. It's not, there is a lack of knowledge for sure. Like there's a lack of clarity because it's such a fast moving topic. So what you think might actually be from 5 years ago, and actually things have really changed. There's definitely a lack of knowledge, but I think that the barrier is our emotions. We can't face it because we're too afraid. And everyone is when it comes to this topic, everyone is so defensive, so afraid. There's all of this pushback and a lot of shame and guilt. And so I definitely believe that as a person, and I hope that I can find better ways to do this other than just songs, but I'd like to move into some role of talking about this more, because I just truly believe that it's the emotions that keep us from engaging politically.
Yeah.
And so I think that my personal opinion is that for most people, starting with the heart is the place where maybe someone might then be moved to act in some political way. And I think unfortunately that also really unfortunately like applies to the actual politicians who are making these decisions. They're, I believe, everyone is in some state of denial. And so I guess to me, like acknowledging my climate feelings and my fear and sadness and grief is like just an attempt to model something that I hope will spread.
Yeah. So I've heard you talk before about being out in nature, where you used to just be able to go out and enjoy nature and enjoy the sights and the wonder of nature, the more you learn about climate change, the more that affects how much you're able to enjoy that. So does that continue into this title about looking at the stars, like looking at an even bigger picture of the universe?
Yeah, it's absolutely, like, I think of climate as like between me and the world, right? Is this knowledge. And how do you metabolize that? And I truly believe I'm not the only person, really struggling with that day to day. And the stars, I mean, when I wrote that line, how is it that I should look at the stars? Like, I remember writing it in my notebook and being like, there is something really key there, because stars are so beautiful and romantic and poetic in our culture as an idea. The stars are like this place of limitless possibility and expansion, and yet for me to actually look up at the stars feels terrifying right now. I mean, it doesn't feel beautiful and magical. It feels like I feel sometimes just an immense sadness of just a knowledge of, this is the only place, this is it, this planet, and we are on a razor's edge, here. And so how should I look at the stars is like a real question of like, how can I do that right now, knowing what I know. And also in the context too of, this denial in our culture also extends to a lot of, bizarre fantasizing about space exploration being somehow an answer to climate. I mean, it's absurd. It's like far easier and less expensive to simply, hold global warming to 1.5 than it is to try to, like, it's absurd, and so I just acknowledge the way I look at the stars is very different than how, Keats did, or like, anyone from another generation before this was in our world.
Did you see the movie Don't Look Up?
I did, yeah.
What did you think about that approach?
I thought, I know there's been a lot of backlash to that movie, but I thought it was a really effective satire. I thought that film, like, and I know that director did consult with a lot of climate scientists about their experiences. Like, it is very considered as a satire, and I think obviously it's very over the top, but it's also not. I mean, it's truly yeah, it was a lot. I think it was a important film in a way, and I feel shy saying that because I think people think it's so silly, but it's like, it's not. It's unfortunately fairly accurate to the way that we've dealt with this crisis. Yeah.
I've spoken to a lot of musicians who over the last couple of years, and I know all of these songs were written pre-pandemic, right? Even the ones for the new record.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a lot of musicians have said that the meaning of some of their songs has shifted over the last couple of years. Have you found anything similar with your writing?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of these songs that have changed in ways that I couldn't have anticipated, like Endless Time. Like the refrain of it being the end of an endless time, and walking and going to buy groceries being this like exotic thing. I mean, that I sang that song. I recorded it on March 12th, 2020. And,
right.
4 days later, it was like it came true. Like, it was insane. I felt very disoriented because that song was just stuck in my head. And I was walking down the street and people were recoiling from me, and everything was closed. And I felt like, I mean, that was wild. And then Stars, I mean, that song that I mentioned, 2020, I mean, that was really weird because I was thinking of the year, that date, that New Year's as being, felt very pivotal to me in terms of like climate, where it's like 2020, that's like a date that's been stated in, climate pledges and climate accords, is like, by 2020, we'll have cut our and then of course it hasn't happened. And 2020 to me means a decade till 2030, which is this other deadline that we're not meeting. Like, to me, I feel a sense of dread with like every new number on the calendar. So that to me was what the significance of now it's 2020 But then when I've sung that song live a couple times, every time I say like it'll be 2020 tomorrow night, I mean, people kind of like nervously laugh, or like there's like a gasp, because 2020 is this like huge dividing point now in all of our lives that we'll never be able to forget. And it's just so funny that it's the first time I put a year or a date into a song, and then it happened to be that date, like the very auspicious, intense date. So
yeah,
that's really changed things for me also.
With these two albums, if somebody, let's imagine somebody sits down and listens to it in its entirety with no distractions, they're not doing the cooking, they're just listening, really listening. How do you want them to feel by the end of the record?
This record or
Ignorance, or the two together? And in which ways would that be different between the two?
I mean, I think that How Is It is a very liminal record. I think it's like a liminal space record. Like I think it's like a sunrise or sunset record. It's like a dusk, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas Ignorance is a bit like, it's like night or day, you know? It's a bit more, it's a lot more public. You know, I think How Is It is like, it's like a private record, you know? It's like a record for aloneness, and Ignorance, you could put on that record at, you know, with your friends, or you know, it's a bit more public. But I think that the overarching thing of both records is really this, I think they're both about denial, like truly, like I think they're both about denial and being denied, as well as being in denial. I mean, I think that they're both really trying to clear aside the fear to get to what's underneath, and the emotions that one is afraid of. I think is the you know, because that's where like the truth is, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's the real through line.
Yeah, there's not a lot of blame in the lyrics.
No, I'm just as susceptible as anyone else to denial. I mean, it's not like I blame someone else for something that I feel I have done better. I don't feel that. Yeah.
So I want to talk about your own musical taste a little bit. What was the first music that really resonated with you when you were growing up?
I mean, I liked like classical music and musicals.
Right.
I didn't really care about, I don't think I even heard pop music, to be honest. I mean, it was very far away. I really liked like Simon and Garfunkel, and like, you know, Peter, Paul and Mary, and like that sort of music was around the house. So I liked that, and yeah, like orchestral music.
Wow.
It wasn't until I was a teenager that I really listened to like rock and roll, or, you know, yeah, popular music, I guess.
So what albums or what artists remind you of your teenage years then?
I don't really want to remember that time in any way, shape, or form. I think the only music that stayed with me from that time is like maybe the Tragically Hip.
Okay.
Which was so ubiquitous in my high school and my, you know, the small town I grew up with. Like the hip was just everywhere. And I definitely, that's one music that I look back on as being like a subterranean influence, and that, you know, Gord Downey's poetry is so strange and bizarre and beautiful. And I think that there's a big difference between growing up with that being the ubiquitous music that all the jocks listen to, that's like free association poetry and like historical references. There's a big difference between that and like, you know, your like formative music is like Red Hot Chili Peppers or something. So I'm grateful to the hip for that subtle teenage influence, even if I wasn't like, yeah, I'm fairly ashamed of everything else.
It's all part of the journey though, right? Like I think everybody has those things that they would love at one point in their life and then never listen to another part of their life.
I mean, honestly, my musical awakening came when I moved to Toronto to go to university. Like that was when I hit on music that really like, it was like, yeah, it was like waking up. Like, it was just like, there was this, I moved to Toronto in like 2003. So 2004 was the big explosion of, Broken Social Scene, Arcade Fire, and all this like sort of, uh, like Godspeed and Do Make Say Think, like a lot of like experimentation in music. And that was what like hooked me in, high school. I wasn't a deep music fan, but when I moved to Toronto, I like just truly fell in love with music.
Yeah. And then it's only a couple of years before you started releasing music from that point.
Yeah.
So was that a quick transition from discovering all that music to making your own?
Well, no, I mean, it was, I was in university and I didn't even, I had this personal event happen in my life in 2004. And I just basically like fell off a cliff and I was like, I'm going to be a musician. And it really that's like an insane thing to have decided. It made no sense at all. Like, I didn't know musicians. Like, I was just going to school, like, and I was an actor, I had no idea, but I like got an interface and I rented a microphone and I started recording on my computer. And I went on this crazy 4-year journey of just this insane determination that I was going to make a record. And I did make a record, and like by myself. So that was my entry into music. And then as I was making this record and putting my weird songs on the internet, I kind of at the same time started playing open mics and around town and sort of learning how to perform and learning how to write songs. But I wrote songs when I was a kid, but I don't remember them. Like, I just remember, playing the piano and thinking I'm writing something. But it was a 4-year process of making my first album, and that also became a process of learning how to play live and then joining other bands and becoming a part of a scene and a community. And
yeah. And you've got tour dates this year, and all the tour dates that you have planned have some of my favorite artists opening for you. So you obviously have good taste, I assume. Yeah. So people like Cassandra Jenkins, Helena Deland, and even Sam Amidon, who I saw years and years ago in a little cafe.
Yeah.
Is it you that's choosing these artists? And what is it? How do you choose somebody to tour with you?
Oh, I mean, those were like dream choices that I didn't think would happen. I mean, Sam Amidon, like, I'm a huge fan of Sam Amidon, like, for many years. Like, I didn't even say, it was just, he was offered. Like, I think I don't know why, but someone said he would like to open. I was like, open for us? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But I was like, okay, yes. And Cassandra Jenkins, like, I heard her record and I loved it. So I was just like, she was at the top of my list and I just couldn't believe she actually said yes. So once again, this is just my, but it is hard because often, you might have an artist that you want to open and, the powers that be feel it doesn't make sense. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of people that I would love to have on a tour, but I get pushed back. I was actually really pushing for like not a singer-songwriter. Like, I wanted to have like a instrumental musician or something more experimental. It's a whole process. And there's lots of back and forth, and I had lots of, but it turned out so beautifully. So I'm excited.
I'm a bit jealous that I'm going to miss all these shows.
I know, yeah. I was sad that Cassandra couldn't like come to Canada and open our Canadian tour.
Yeah, because I love that album as well. It's one of my favorites from last year.
It's super special. Yeah.
So if somebody had never heard The Weather Station, is there one album or one song that you would want them to start with?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ignorance is the one. I mean, I think that would be it would be a weird place to start because then you would listen to the older stuff and be really confused. But yeah, I'm really proud. I'm proud of that record. So yeah, that one. Yeah.
Okay, great. And so what's going to be next for you? The album's coming out in March, and then what?
A lot of touring. I mean, we're going on tour next week, and then Europe in March, and festivals in the summer. We've got a lot, and I'm gonna try to make, if they let me have enough time off the road, I'm trying to make my next record this year. So the next thing that will follow ignorance.
Yeah. So like a couple of years ago, you were obviously feeling very prolific. Has that continued?
I would say in a way, no, like it hasn't. The pandemic was a quiet time for me in terms of music, writing music. I didn't write much music, but I wrote a lot of other things. Like I felt like I got pulled into other creative directions for most of that time. But this year, yeah, I've had a lot more time and yeah, I feel like there is something about, I wish it was different, but it's hard when something hasn't been released. It feels unfinished. You know, there's like the work is not done. And I think I'm not the only artist that feels like a bit trapped. Like until it's out, you know, I can't quite move on. And I think I'm finally like, since Ignorance came out, I'm like, especially because this record is like all a part of that. I feel like I finally like was able to like open the door again, and the songs are coming again.
Well, I wish you all the best for the future. I hope all these tour dates go ahead with no interruptions. And yeah, congratulations on all this music. It's nice to see you having so much success. Yeah. And hopefully I'll get to see you play in a room soon.
Okay, cool. Thank you.